Welcome to Flesh and Pod, a Flesh and Blood podcast, breaking down weekly news and notes from the tournament scene, community drama, game strategy, and more. And now, here are your hosts, Derek and Logan.
Hello, and welcome to episode 135 of Flesh and Pod. My name is Logan. I am your host, and with me, as always, is D.E.D. Dead, Derek Oswald. Derek, my guess is you didn't do anything in Flesh and Blood this week, did you?
No, I didn't do anything in anything. Like at all.
At all?
No, I mean, yeah, that's the reality. I was supposed to go play in locals for Star Wars. I was supposed to go play in my armory. I did neither of those things. Work has been kind of crazy, and family stuff has been kind of crazy, and like I jinxed it. My wife's car is now like her front end is shaking and squeaking when she brakes, so I'm calling our local mechanic tomorrow to see if he's got availability this week, if I can speak, so that we can hopefully get it checked and taken care of before we make the drive down to Ohio this weekend. Yeah, it's just been a lot going on all fronts, and so I didn't travel for my leisure. Most of my leisure in the past 7 days has been like laying in a spot and not moving when I have that free time. So yeah,
I kind of did that on Sunday.
That.
Yeah. I did a little bit of that on Sunday because it'd been a while since I'd like just not done anything at all. And so that turned into my Sunday just to kind of recharge because I didn't do shit in Flesh and Blood. I was burned the fuck out. And not from Flesh and Blood, mind you, just burned out in general. I had to run a Star Wars showdown on Saturday, and then from there it got over relatively quick, and I'm like, I don't want to do anything. So I caught up on the boys. I went and cooked for friends of ours because I enjoy doing that. He was my buddy Edgar. He is a fucking legend, by the way. He collects whiskeys and bourbons. Like that's kind of his thing. He's from Kentucky. Okay. Makes sense. Still has a house in Louisville and a house in Des Moines. Okay. With him and his wife Mary. They're the best people. And so he's like, hey, while I'm cooking, he's like, do you need a drink? And I'm like, obviously I need a drink. I always drink while I cook. And he's just like, okay, what do you want? And I'm like, he's like, you want beer? You want liquor? I'm like, just pour me whatever you think is good. He's like, okay. And so he pours me a snifter. And he's like, okay. And I drink it. I'm like, oh my, what the fuck sorcery is this? And he's like, this is an 18-year Sazerac. And I'm like, Jesus Christ. Like I literally was, the smell alone, just the nose of it, like sent shivers down my spine. And I was just like, this is okay. And it was the smoothest fucking thing. And so it just was like the perfect whiskey. And he's like, you like that one? I'm like, that's quite possibly the best whiskey I've ever had. Like this is way up there. Like I would take this over Pappy in a heartbeat. And he's like, okay, let me just pour you another one. And so he pours me another one. I have another one. And then I switch over to beers because I still have to drive home and shit like that. And we're sitting there playing a game at this table. And I see there's like this piece of painter's tape on the back of the bottle. And I'm like, hey, what's this? He's like, oh, that's the valuation on the bottle. The number on it was 1,100. And I'm like, I owe you like $50 for like the 2 things of whiskey I just drank. And he's just like, nah, we're good. It's there for drinking. And I'm like, Jesus fuck, just drinking $1,100 rye. Awesome. Like, let's just go, I guess. I
just want to say delicious. Sazerac would make a great D&D character name.
Yeah, it really would, honestly. Sazerac.
Like when you said it, I don't know why, but I was like, that's an orc barbarian if I've ever heard one.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like I was lost in thought there for a moment.
Yeah, no, it's definitely up there. And it was just that was delicious. And then so I did that. Then on Sunday, I just did fuck all. Like I just didn't want to, so I didn't, and didn't even record. But that wasn't my fault.
Yeah, well, that was just more of me not doing the thing, right?
It is what it is. But yeah, so it was a nice week to a nice day to kind of take off of the entire being a person thing, because sometimes that shit's exhausting and you just don't want to. So I took a day and didn't. It felt awesome. I recommend it to anybody out there that has not taken a day to just not be a person in a while.
Yeah, you need to do it now because none of us are going to be able to retire anyway, right? Like you have to live that retirement dystopia. Life now. Yeah. So
well, I've been saying that for years, which is why I don't.
Yeah. People
pretend
are hey,
I'm going to retire.
What's your retirement plan? And I'm like, dying.
Yeah. Like being not alive. That's my retirement plan. I have enough life insurance so that somebody else can retire. That's kind of it. But yeah, so it's also, oddly enough, a very light week in Flesh and Blood. So also kind of a nice thing, quite honestly, because we don't have a ton to talk about, although we do have good listener questions. So those will occupy a ton of time as per usual. But really the only thing to talk about right now is national season. No real new info came out except for new at nationals. Because holy shit. New actually had the most wins this week during nationals. Not Zen.
I am not surprised, but I stand by my assessment. I'm not surprised, and I think that this is a byproduct of a couple of things. And the follow-up is going to be part 2 of your notes here, which is Zen was incredibly popular, continues to be incredibly popular, is very clearly a powerful deck, and New is good into Zen. Right. And so if there's a lot of people that are trying to game plan for Zen, or they're just tired of losing to Zen, or they just don't want to play Zen or whatever, New is a new hero, right? She's fun to play. I've said it before. I think she's very fun to play. So she's a very attractive option. Now, the other reason I think that she's very attractive is the other way that you beat Zen is Guardians. And I see in your notes that, you've got some stuff for Victor there. So Victor makes sense. I also think Bravo would be very good into Zen as well. The problem is that both of them are also kind of bad into New, right? So if you do have people who are like, well, maybe New just isn't my thing, but I also still want a game plan for Zen, so I run Guardian. Well, all the people who are picking up New are going to be good into them as well. So I am not surprised that New is doing well. I still... I know people are going to keep giving me shit for it, but I still don't think that she is as powerful as she looks on paper. I think that the performance we are seeing is a byproduct of the meta, which is a good thing overall for the game health, because it also does mean that heroes that can find a niche when metas shift a certain way are finding success. That means that if the winds blow in a different direction, if Zen starts losing steam, then I think New will also become less favorable as well, and other heroes can potentially shine in that regard, right? So,
yep.
I don't think that this is like the end all be all. I know that there's going to be a lot of people that are like raising some red flags because obviously Part the Misfail is our first talented set in a while, and let's be honest, gang, all 3 heroes are pretty well positioned, and so I think some people are like kind of very early panicking going, it's Arya 2.0. And I'm not saying these heroes are not strong, but I don't think it's, I don't think it's to that regard, because you have to remember that it wasn't even just all the heroes, but like Arya had pushed equipment, right? Like Winter's Wail was a thing.
Yeah, I mean, they've had to ban Duskblade before it was Eagle.
Yeah, so I don't think we're on Arya level, but obviously talents have historically elevated hero power, and I think that this is no exception. So we will see. I will say this as well. I don't expect the Part the Mistveil heroes to just magically drop out of the limelight. I do expect them to continue to do well because they're very well positioned right now. So it's going to look, at least for the next, I'd say 3 to 6 months, like they are head and shoulders above everything else. I don't necessarily think that's 100% true. I think that they are just very well positioned and they're very fun. And those things lead to popularity. And it's much easier to win events when you're also incredibly well represented at events.
Yeah, so we have, because Vishra's a fucking legend. Like, let's just go ahead and put that out there, that Barrett is always out there doing God's work, it turns out. And right now, your meta game shares, Zen has the most at 16.1%. So that is the most played deck. Number 2 is actually Azalea, but Azalea at 12.4%. But so 252 copies of Azalea have been played, but only 1 or 2 wins. Azalea has 1 win out of all of those copies. So it's like Azalea is there to prey on Zen, but if New is too, is New just that good into Azalea?
So here's the thing. New is pretty good into Azalea. There are some situations where obviously Azalea can still win. I would say New is probably favored in that matchup, but it's not a polarized matchup. I think that this might have just been a good streak or a good week or so for New into Azalea. I think over time, long string of matches across several players of varying skill and whatever, I would say it's probably like 60-40 in favor of New. But Azalea can absolutely still win that. A lot of it really does come down to the disruption on the New side has to connect, and even more so, it has to connect on some pretty key Azalea cards.
Find some spots. Yeah.
One of the things that you have to remember is that your hero power as New is almost dead in that matchup because there's not a lot of blues in that deck to begin with, and the ones that are there, you're not playing, right? It's not like they're even just like running blue pitch stuff that you could maybe sneak in. They're arrows, right? Or it's Knock the Death Whistle or whatever. Right. So it really is just about the hand disruption and the fact that most Azalea players are not wanting to dilute their deck because they want to go like pump into arrows. So they don't run a lot of defense reactions, right? So it really just kind of comes down to, as the New player, do my hands align better damage wise than theirs? And I think you can go toe to toe, but if yours has hand disruption, you're in a better position because the disruption that Azalea offers you doesn't really hurt New. So when you think about cards like Remorseless, you're going to play 1 action, and then you're going to put a bunch of attack reactions on it. Right? That's how you get around Remorseless, right? Same thing with Red in the Ledger. Red in the Ledger against other aggressive decks can be very, very strong. All that really does is take out some dagger plays or, make you sit on a Slither or something, but you can still be very effective into a Red in the Ledger because, again, you can hopefully just put a bunch of attack reactions on something. So, like I said, New, I think, is favored. Really just comes down to whether you find that disruption or not, or if you're the Azalea player. So as somebody who, have played a decent amount of New now, the things that give me trouble are, 1, big dominated arrows, because a lot of times even the more mid-rangey News don't have enough defense reactions to stop them all. So you kind of want to prioritize those. And then the other big thing is, instead of focusing on things like Red in the Ledger, your good effects are the Seek and Destroys or the Inertias, so that you prevent them from banking attack reactions for setup turns. Even if you're getting rid of a Slither or Fang Strike or whatever, that can help. And then the other effect, believe it or not, is Blood Rot. Just threaten extra damage. Just outrace them. And if you can, double lace with Blood Rot, an infecting shot, and hit, they're not going to have, even though they're so blue heavy, they're not going to want to pitch those blues because that's below rate for them. A lot of times their blues are still more valuable being actively played. So you can really put them in a hard spot. So yeah.
Gotcha.
And
Rounding.
this is Assassin Corner for.
Oh, we're back. Yeah.
Yeah,
took
we're
a week
back.
off, but
Sorry.
we're back.
I mean, you get me talking about it, and I get excited. I'm sorry.
So rounding out the top 5 in decks played is you have a KO at 11.7%, has 2 wins. New is at 10.4% with 6 wins. And then Enigma at 8.3% with 2 wins. So basically 3 of the top 5 played heroes are from Part the Mistveil. And the other 2 are armory decks. So cute. But the best conversion is actually Victor, who has
Where's Bolton?
Nowhere close.
He's got an armory deck, right? He should be really strong.
Yeah, he should, and is not. He shows up in my notes in a minute, but but Victor is the best conversion right now with 9 top 8s and 3 wins out of 9 top 8s. Whereas, you have Zen with 48 top 8s to get to 9 wins, which is still really good, but not quite as good. Winning a little right around 20% ish. So it looks like with, as expected, as the metagame changes and targets change and things like that, we see better representation to a degree. We just kind of see the leapfrogging effect, which seems like when you have a preponderance of events happening at the same time, so week after week after week. So we see this during ProQuest seasons as well, and RTN season. There's that leapfrogging effect where it's like, okay, this is the popular hero. Let's jump ahead of it with something else. Let's try to beat that hero. There's not a lot of level 2ing in Flesh and Blood the way that there was in Magic specifically, where you have your level 0 deck, which is the best deck in format, quote unquote. Magic was very bad at this because usually the best thing to be doing was legit just the best thing to be doing, and attacking it made it so that you're absolutely cold to anything else. Then level 1 is what beats level 0, and then level 2 is what beats level 1, right? So the leapfrogging effect makes it so that you get a lot of level, you don't get a ton of level 2 decks showing up, and
because there's not enough time.
Right, there's not enough time, and that impacts things. So
yeah, I just wanted to stick that in there because if you're listening and you're like, hey, it's just a 2-deck format, it's not that's the case. That's not the case. It's just that you have to adapt to the meta so fast that you don't have as much time for those to shine. The meta is, in my opinion, still very diverse, and there's a lot of decks that can do well.
Sure.
It's just we're seeing like immediate knee-jerk reactions to whatever's good.
Yeah, like Prism is still over 5% representation. Kasai is still over 5%. You have Levia close to 5, over 4%. You have a ton of different representation in here. The only thing is those bigger chunks, and a lot of it being the new heroes. And that tends to make people go, well, are these a problem? And the answer is not really in most cases. Now, I can hear the argument for Zen because of the pop-off turn type stuff. But, you look at Kano's representation right now, 1 win and 8 top 8s, and percentage-wise is, I guess Kano is the one that's at 5.3%. So Kano's at 5.3%. So a decent representation, an okay conversion, but at the same time isn't crushing everything. And so a lot of people argue, well, Zen's just the better version. It's like, well, is it? I guess I don't know. They both have oops, I win turns. So I don't know. But right now you see New takes over the top spot and wins for the week with 5 over 4. It's pretty good. And then again, you have Victor at 2, and then Dash getting in there too. So if we take a look at Living Legend boards, Dash did end up taking 2 down, so grabbed 50 points, has 860 now. So still a potential to catch those last, what would it be, 6 wins to throw her over at 25 a win. Be 150.
Yeah, 150, yeah.
So still possibility that Dash goes away, Dash Inventor. Zen has 295. Like Zen is doing the best KO impression right now, and just trying to speed run the board. News at 175. And then Enigma is at 85. So Enigma, I remember when all of MST was out there and everybody could stare at it, that people were like, man, Enigma is going to be super strong. And here we are, it being the bottom of the list. So it just goes to show, until you start playing games, sometimes it doesn't shake out the way you think it will.
That sounds like blasphemy.
Sure. Then Dash.io has actually picked up a couple wins, and Victor has obviously taken 55 points on the season. So, good looks all around the board there. We do have a list of heroes that have yet to put any points on the board during this season. And because we are a podcast of the people, we're going to go ahead and list those heroes for you. They are Fi.
Teklavasan.
Yeah. Yep. Well, he's on the list. Fi, Bravo, Katsu, Viserai, Bolton, Uzuri, Rhinar, Max, Teklo, Vincent, Arachne, Olympia, and Betsy. Not a single point for any of those heroes during the Mistveil season.
Some of those are not surprises, but some of those are surprises to me personally.
So, the ones that surprise me are specifically that I would pull out of this list are Uzuri, surprises me. Fi surprises me. I thought that at least we'd have one Fi spike at some point in time. And then to a degree, Bravo surprises me. Yeah. Because usually you have a Kale McCreath or somebody that will just drag Bravo's old bloated corpse from WTR to some living legend points. But not the case so far.
I kind of agree, except for mine was different from Fi. So I think that Bravo, for the same reason that we're seeing Victor get some, I would expect, Bravo to have won one. Because he can do all the same things Victor can do most of the time, ish. Some things better, some things worse, but like in terms of this meta and what you're good at, like Bravo's good at the same things that Victor is good at. So I would expect Bravo. Uzuri, I think, is still really strong. Also very flexible. So kind of surprised there. But the one that stands out to me is actually Rhinar. And the reason that I think that it's kind of a shock is that this feels like a meta that would be good to Rhinar, because a lot of the decks that are good right now don't like to block.
But Rhinar historically has always been good in decks that want to block because it makes it so they can't.
Well, with the Intimidates, sure, but he's also capable of some pretty big explosive turns, the same way that...
But why wouldn't you just play Levia then?
Because it requires less setup, and I think that Rhinar's explosiveness is potentially slightly better than KO. I don't know. I feel like Rhinar is just underrepresented.
Sure, and that definitely could be. Like I said, I think that KO's damage output, just generally speaking, is higher due to the ability to make, huge turns happen better. I also feel like Levia can basically play the same game plan with better armor at her disposal. I can still do claw, shenanigans and shit like that pretty easily. So
yeah.
My feeling is Rhinar's just not getting played because he's the bottom of the brutes right now. Whereas if Levia were to, if KO were to climb the boards and go out, KO would effectively take Levia with him by getting rid of Claw. Whereas Rhinar, whereas Rhinar with Club is still viable. But I think that's where we're at there. Bolton's still a little bit of a surprise because Bolton can do some silly stuff and is very flexible, but I don't think that Bolton can hold up to a Zen ever.
Yeah, the problem with Bolton right now is he's just too fair.
Right. Yep. And some people say the same thing about Dorinthia and about Kasai as well, in the Warrior Suite as well. But like Dorinthia has Dawnblade, and if you're not blocking, Dawnblade gets to be a fucking problem. And then the Kasai side of things is the most consistent deck, making use of Valiant Dynamos, on top of the fact that you can just get to a Blood on Her Hands turn and turn a corner very, very quickly. So, especially on those giant cash-in turns and shit like that, you can make things really awkward if they don't want to block really fast. So that's, a big part of that reasoning. So I get those two having had at least a little bit of success. But yeah, the one that really stands out to me though is probably the same as you, as Uzuri. Because while New is very good, obviously, Uzuri's not bad. It's almost like you see the same splash damage of just play X, that Rhinar, Fi, and Fi and Katsu are seeing with Uzuri, because you can just play New.
I mean, you could, but they do, in my opinion anyway, when they're built correctly, they do functionally two very different things. New is aggressive with disruption, and Uzuri is far more mid-range, where you want to ideally, block with 1 to 2 cards, and then, either do one attack into a switcheroo, or you send your isolate into a relevant on hit sort of thing. And ultimately, I think that's probably the problem, is that the decks that Uzuri is good into are not as popular as they were before. Uzuri was better in a heavy hitters situation, when you could, run into some warriors or some of the other things where you might be able to, catch them off guard, because they're, when you're playing into warrior against an Uzuri, there's always that fear of, I'm going to put my equipment in front of it, and that's when they'll finally have the already dead or whatever, right? Now, it's just Zen who's I don't care.
Yeah, it's fine.
Whatever, there's, even if you hit me with CNC or even the new weakest link or whatever, it's not going to be enough. And so Uzuri's disruption, it's just not as good as New's, because New peels cards from their hand, whereas Uzuri's disruption for the most part is more I make things that you play less relevant, or I have to, I've played Uzuri with Censor, and I think that card is potentially in a really good spot right now, but I don't think that's enough to win you the Zen matchup. Similarly, Amnesia's in a great spot right now, but if you're not hitting on the turn where it matters, a lot of it is also a timing thing, right? Taking cards out of somebody's hand is always relevant, right? But cards like Amnesia and Censor, and to some extent even Weakest Link, in Command and Conquer, they need to hit when their effect is relevant. And so getting the stars to align consistently is more difficult with her.
Yeah, you hit them with a Censor, choose bonds or whatever, and then they just don't have one.
Right. Or that's the turn where they're instead I'm doing Crouching Tiger stuff, right?
Yep.
Or you say, Crouching Tiger, and they're okay, I just bond you to death. There's
or say Ancestral Harmony, and they're just okay, great. Don't care.
Say
so
Art of War, and they just wait one more turn.
Right. Art of War is the worst, objectively the worst one, because they're just
I know. I'm just further illustrating that, that choice, it can be very relevant in the right spot, but you also have to hit it in the right spot. Right. Whereas the New disruption is just pretty much always relevant.
Yeah. So with one more week of the Mistveil season left, you have Canada, Greece, Hong Kong, Ireland, Italy, Japan, Netherlands, Poland, Portugal, Singapore, Sweden, Thailand, Estonia, Switzerland, Brunei, and Croatia left as countries to go. All of those should be completed this weekend, and that's 535 points left, I believe. 535 points left. So could still see a lot of Living Legend movement. It does. I mean, obviously, it looks like Fi is easily surviving the season. There is definitely a potential for Dash to come close or get over if by some weird reason that Dash just pushes. but no real threats anywhere else. It'll just be how far does Zen get up the board is kind of going to be the story here. Like if Zen ends up at 400 plus points after one season, it'll be like, what do? And that's when I think at that level is probably when the real questions start coming from LSS about, do we need to take something from this deck ahead of the Pro Tour so the Pro Tour doesn't suck? And
probably not, because like once we get Rosetta and we all learn that like the wizards get to make the equivalent of an embodiment of Earth, but instead it's like their version of a spectral shield or something, and then they'll just prevent the go wide turns, or I don't know. I think Rosetta's gonna really change things up.
It'll have an impact, that's for sure. So far there's been like, as far as the base cards in a set, not counting the expansion slot because the expansion slot can do anything. The probably the least impactful set recently was actually Bright Lights, but that was still super impactful because it basically enabled an entire
one class.
right, and it made Dash.io as scary as all hell. And it made that deck entirely comes from there for the most part, with one, the hero, and two, a lot of the enabling items that you can play that make the surprise take 40 turns are in that set. So there's still a lot that goes on in Bright Lights, but it's probably the least impactful because one hero.
Petition to change her name. Sorry, I just realized it's Dash Inventor Extraordinaire and then Dash Grenade Launcher.
Right. Dash Boomstick. Dash whatever. Yeah, I get it. I don't hate it. But yeah, that's really it for the news this week. We got through the news in like a half hour.
Yeah.
That's a record. There is also just our normal awareness that we make for everybody that you do have the first 5K brawl of the Realm qualifying season will be Saturday, July 20th in Princeton, New Jersey. It is actually a ProQuest Plus. I did not realize that until I looked at the mothership. And so for a $70 entry, you get a ProQuest Plus. So you'll have the VIP Realm invite, a PTI, plus your share of $5,000 in cash. So yeah, that's more than I thought it was going to be. So that's a $70 entry. And then Sunday, the 21st, also at Realm Fest in Princeton, New Jersey, will be a Blitz Battle Hardened. So you also have a Battle Hardened that weekend. It is Blitz, so you're aware. But there are a lot of Blitz people out there that I know would love to be playing this. I would love to be playing this. I just don't think I can make it. But if you're even remotely on the fence, you now have PTIs tied to the weekend as well as Realm invites, as well as just money. So yeah, show up. It's probably well worth it at this point. That is my PSA to you, our loyal listeners. Anything to add, Tremor? Oh, Derek will be casting it. Case you care about that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's a thing, right?
Well, I mean, depends. Are you gonna actually show up?
Yeah.
Don't get Boeinged.
Yeah. Well, I'm not gonna be a whistleblower anytime soon, so.
But their planes also can just randomly have like doors fly off and shit. So you can get Boeing two ways.
And counting.
2 ways so far. Moving on before we get sued. Let's get these listener questions going. Like we might be out of here in record time. We'll make a short episode for people's podcast feeds. First question is from Dom. It's like 5 questions, but whatever. Split format season thoughts. Initial thoughts on choice. Stores at risk of not getting future skirmishes by having low attendance due to choosing the wrong format. Living Legend points being set at 5, and what hero would we play this weekend? I personally think that the choice is fine because you probably have pockets around the country of around the world, I should say, of living legend, rabid areas. I don't know where they are because they're not around me, but they probably exist. I think that's totally fine. I have zero issues with having that as an option, and Blitz has kind of always been a skirmish option. It's like the second highest Blitz format right now as far as competitive nature is a skirmish, and then there are battle hardens sometimes. So I think that that's fine, and I think that giving stores the choice, I feel like stores should probably be in touch enough with their player bases to be able to understand or poll what the player base would want and run accordingly. I don't think that that's much. I think that's much ado about nothing. And then the LL points being set at 5. I think they were honestly set higher to push some of the wizards out and like old them out before they just kind of said, okay, we can settle it back. And Kasai for that matter. Before we settle it back down. Oh, and Shane. Jesus, fuck, there was a lot of things that needed to go. But I think that that's why they were higher for a minute, and then they brought them back down once sort of the majority of problem decks were either gone or very close to gone. That's my feeling on them being set at 5. I'll answer the last one after Derek gives his thoughts on the first 3 points.
Well, I don't have a lot to say on a lot of the initial things. I think the choice is fine. I think that you should always realistically try to do these things with a split format so that stores have some variety in the area, right? Because that also allows people to maybe try out new stores or let stores try new things. Yes, it always helps when people have something that they know and love and expect, right? Like if you're a shop that's a hard classic constructed shop and you get good turnout for those, obviously you still want to run those events. But I think that part of enticing new players or opening up new avenues for gameplay, it's still important to run other events. I don't have any problems with the Living Legend points change personally, because at the end of the day, it's not something that's like hard set in stone. It never has been. It's never going to be. They're doing what they think is best for the game. I don't think that there's any sort of malicious intent behind anything, right? They're trying to find what feels comfortable, right? They want players to enjoy their heroes. They want themselves to like have the opportunity to enjoy the things they spend such a long time creating. So I do think that that's always going to be a bit of a moving target. So I'm fine with that. As far as like, format and choosing the wrong one, I don't think that you can choose the wrong one. Here's the one thing that I do want to say about like Living Legend format specifically, but I guess I'll also just say Blitz is a great format and y'all need to stop hating on it. And I always fully support Blitz. So I'll beat that horse to death. But even though there's a lot of people who have complaints about some of the ways that they've handled Living Legend format up until now, and again, it's new and they're going to change things as they try to dial it in. It's not perfect. And I know that some people are not super excited about it, but my hot take is that they have to figure out a way to make it relevant, and they have to continue to run it in competitive seasons in order to draw interest in it, because if it's never in the competitive side, that won't get enough feedback up to them, right? Because there's probably just not enough like store run events that are relevant enough for them to make the balance changes or make the changes to the format that are necessary. But I firmly believe for the longevity of the game that it needs to be a successful format, because you are definitely going to have people who just fall in love with a hero. And when that hero hits Living Legend, yeah, they could pick up new ones, but we've seen it time and time again. There's a lot of people who just say, I'll wait till I get a Prism replacement. I'll wait till I get a Chain replacement. And those people are still waiting. And then even if they get it, right, if you're a diehard or a Prism player and you got the new one and you're like, hey, that's just not my vibe, I'll just wait for the third Prism. All of that is addressed when you have a good Living Legend format with enough events that people can still participate in the game. And I think the secondary market will thrive if it's a working format. I think competitive stuff will thrive if it's a working format. And if I'm being entirely honest, I think that your casual scene will be better off for it as well, because people won't feel as bad about like, hey, if I buy into this and then my thing is gone, what do I do? Even though I'm like not hardcore invested or whatever, like even just telling a casual person like, yes, there's a Living Legend system, but you know, we still, you know, run events, even if it's quarterly, right? Like every 3 months, there's a Living Legend tournament, something that makes them feel like it's not a waste for them to get into the game at any point in time. So, that's my real take, is not necessarily whether it'll be a hit or not. I think that it needs to be a hit and they need to keep running events until they get it sorted out.
Agreed.
Personally.
Well, and because they need to see, what's the popularity, right? Like, is this something that we need to make changes to? Is this something people like? Is this something that people just haven't tried? Like, they need to see the numbers. And the only way you can see the numbers is give the option to run shit. So that makes total sense to me. Now for the hard part, what would you play?
I thought this was supposed to be hard.
Okay. Well, each format, pick one.
Arachne, Solitary Confinement, and Starvo. And
so you'd still play Starvo?
Yeah, and before you get on me on it, I love Bravo. I liked playing Starvo. I was trying to build and play Starvo before like we even had all of his stuff together, because I was just a Bravo fanatic.
Bravo dude, yeah.
Yeah, I'm a Bravo dude. And it's the only format I can still play that hero, and so yeah. I gotta be honest, like they could end up like neutering him and I'd probably still play him, because again, Living Legend is the only place I can play him. Right? Mm-hmm. And I like that hero. I think that it's a fun deck building puzzle when you have so many cool options to choose from.
Yeah. In Blitz, I'd play Briar. I've been playing Briar in Blitz since Kasai went away. So I would just continue to do that.
You're running out of time to play her.
That's why I'm going to continue to play her, because I don't think she lives through the season. Pretty sure she's going to die. But that's why, that's one of the reasons too. And Living Legend would kind of be a coin flip. I'd either play Briar in Living Legend as well, because you can just play the hard Cheerios version, which is a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. Or honestly, I would just take a spin with completely powered up Zen. So being able to play Belittle Minnowism and being able to do all of the variety of stupid fucking shenanigans with like plunder runs and shit might be a lot of fun just to try. Odds are I'd probably still just play Briar, because again, just ball lightning's a hell of a drug. If you've never got to fucking ball lightning somebody, man, it feels awesome. It is goddamn painful. And
it does feel pretty good.
It's really rough when you're trying to explain to them how you're dealing Kano damage. Because suddenly you're just being multiplicative with this stupid fucking effect and then another effect on top of it or whatever. And typically they're just like, wait, that's not how that works. It's like, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but that's exactly how it works and why it was banned. Because it's fucking rough. But yeah, that's probably what I would do. I think that's great. I think that those two decks, I think playing both the versions of Briar would be fun. I would just have a good time doing it. Ready to move on?
Yeah.
Okay.
I like the next question too. So
I love the next question. It's actually one that gets the thinking going. This is one's from our friend Joshua Scott. As Flesh and Blood continues to mature, where in the community do you think content creation needs to grow? News, gameplay analysis, deck text, lore, fan art, cosplay, etc. You're probably going to be longer form on this than I am. Actually, if that's necessarily true. I think we're both going to be fairly long form on this. So have at it.
I mean, mine won't be very long form, I don't think. I think it's kind of straightforward. I think that we have a good chunk of gameplay stuff, some great analysts. A lot of people do deck techs because it's and this is not a knock on the people who do it well, but it's like the easiest type of content to create for a card game, right? You make a deck, you explain it, fun. So for me, the places that I think are lacking the most are in the creative spaces. So more people tackling lore, but not just in covering the existing lore that's out there. I would also personally like to see more people do creative writing. Like, this is going to sound really cheesy, but like fan fiction shit, right? Do homebrew D&D campaigns set in the world of Wraith.
I'm about to say, what's to stop you from doing Critical Role in the world of Wraith?
You're right there with me. That creative space of like, how do I do storytelling in an unofficial capacity? You choose it as the setting, and then you do that live storytelling.
Adapt the system. Yeah.
Yep. So that's certainly an option. I also think that, obviously more fan art would be great. I think one of the reasons that's so intimidating is just because the art is so stellar to begin with. And so if somebody's like, just doing it for fun or a novice, they might feel like, hey, why do I have to try to even compare my work to some of these outstanding artists that keep dropping banger after banger for this game? So like, I get it, but I would still love to see it. And I would like to see it because you can do funny things with it that like you would never get to see on the cards themselves, right? Draw characters together, do all that stuff. Draw characters as meme templates so that we can all caption them and share them. But the other space that I really think is lacking is casual gaming. In a couple of ways. One, just casual gaming in a way where the emphasis is on fun. I think 3Floating has one of the best YouTube channels in the game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because they take gameplay, but they treat it like a reality show, and that's fun. And I'm not saying everyone has to mimic their system, but there are all sorts of other ways that you can engage with the game in a casual setting and just focus on the fun part. Again, just make up formats, try new things. All of the stuff. I mean, Flesh and Blood is a fantastic competitive game, and so all of the stuff based around the competitive side is pretty well covered. So really, you just have to say to yourself, like, what are all of the other ways that people either are enjoying the game, or what are the ways they could be enjoying the game, and then tackle those.
Yeah, so when I read this list, a couple of things that just stuck out to me are, well, obviously the lore thing. I mean, I was right with you. And the first thing I thought of was like a lore cast that isn't the actual lore of the game, but what's like the literal thought was, can't you just do Critical Role, a type of content, just put it in the world of Wraith with the Wraith characters? Like, you could do that, like, very easily. Matter of fact, maybe I fucking will. Because the last thing, the thing I need most is a way to burn more of my free time, because I have so much of it.
Yeah.
The other thing that I think is interesting is there are no cosplay podcasts. Like, most of the cosplay content that exists out there are the cosplayers coming onto other shows, and also the cosplayers, actually just doing the cosplay events. But I think it'd be really interesting if they just had a show that was multiple cosplayers talking through the process of making fucking cosplay and going through their process. I know some of it is obviously there are like sort of a trade secret to a degree of how these things work, but it feels like one of the areas of the game that is mystifying to people. You peeling back the curtain just a little bit would be very interesting in my mind. I think the interview space is actually not super saturated, but the interview shows that are out there, like Fresh and Buds, are just so good at what they do that it really makes it difficult to want to even put a toe in, right? Like, yeah. It makes it so that while, yeah, you feel like you can, get in there and do a thing and it's not super occupied, but there's somebody doing it so well, or some people doing it so well, that it becomes intimidating. And I'm not saying don't. I'm saying that I can understand being reticent to do so. Our space, I don't even know what our space is. Like, our space is the best way to define what we are. If you have to define what we are, is we are theoretically a news and notes show, but we are.
Is that really what we are?
Theoretically? But we're not. We're more of just the atmosphere is always the desire for the atmosphere, and I think we do it well, has always been, we want to be a show that makes you feel like you're in the room with your friends talking about a thing you love. We want you to feel like you're part of the conversation we're having. Some people have told me that they actually shout at their fucking radios or shout at their, at whatever when we're talking, when we're wrong, or when we're right.
Those people are going hoarse.
Well, I mean, yes, they are. They definitely have lost their voice a few times. We're wrong a lot, but it's all in good fun. So like we're a weird one. And I'm taking no shots at anybody when I say any of this, but the things that I really feel very passionate about are reflected in our fan base, the fucking fappers, because my whole thing has always been, everything we do has to be organic. We don't, we're not throwing a bunch of money at I'm the worst marketing person in the world to be like in charge of growing this show. Anything that we've grown has been kind of accidental. We're very bad at making number go bigger. It all just kind of happens. And our fan base is not one of a lot of occasional listeners. It's one of people who don't miss a show. They're like the most loyal fucking listeners on the planet. And it's all of that. We paid for no engagement whatsoever. We just kind of do the thing and people respond, and have responded for 135 fucking weeks. But that's something that I think is a product of us being so early in this space too. So I don't think that what we've done would be easy to replicate, but I think that doing another news show that's more grounded in talking about topics in a less, Tom fuckery sort of way would also be somewhere that could be exposed. I do believe that there needs to be more new player stuff. However, that being said, I do know of at least 4 people local to me that have learned to play the game just by watching 3 floating. Like literally, they just watched 3 floating and learned how to play the game. So good job, boys. So I don't know that that's there. And you're right. Deck techs are the second easiest form of content. The first is box breaks. That's always the easiest form of content because you're opening packs.
Sure. The thing is that with a deck tech, though, you theoretically have infinite amount of time to prepare before you start recording, and the box breaks are typically done in one sitting or live. It's hard to like script that, and so to do a box break and then like also have it be entertaining, I think is more difficult than it sounds.
I mean, okay. I guess
because here's I guess for me the difference between the two. I can watch a dry as fuck deck tech and still feel fine as long as I learned what I wanted to learn about said deck. But if I watch a dry as fuck box break, I'm probably not making it to the end.
Okay, I mean, that's fair. I also think that personally I personally think that short form content think what DM Armada does is also a good spot that there could be more, honestly. Some more, 10 to 20 minute type of videos with high production values, like Steven does, would be pretty welcome, I think. Steven, again, we're at that spot where Steven does such a good job that maybe you just don't want to because you don't want to be compared. But at the same time, I think there's room there. But so there's growth spot there. So I'd say like the biggest ones though are going to be the lore generation and casual new player. I think are both your two biggest areas. We just agree there. Good?
Yeah.
All right. Moving on to a very serious topic. From Sergeant Snipes. What's the traditional hot dog of your home state? Example, West Virginia is mustard, onions, chili, and slaw. You had me until the slaw. I don't... What? Is there a Michigan hot dog?
I mean, we just do conies here. So it's like chili, onions, usually mustard would be like, I guess, your go-to. But like, you wouldn't call it like anything different. Like, it's just a standard coney dog that just made its way up here, sort of thing.
Yeah, quite honestly, here it's the corn dog. Like, we deep fry everything. And
yeah, I mean, we have good corn dogs like at the fair, and we also have, depending on, so that's what I'm trying to say is like our state doesn't have anything. Different areas have different things. So like here in the Greater Lansing area, there's actually some pretty decent like Greek places that'll do like a special hot dog. But that's different from what you'll get on like the east side or the west side of the state, sort of thing.
Yeah. So yeah, with Iowa, it's more of a, well, we've also started iterating on the fucking corn dog too, because reasons. So the perfect version of the corn dog to me is the corn brat, which is just a corn dog, but instead of having a hot dog inside, has a bratwurst inside. So you've just strictly upgraded, like no two ways. Those are delectable, but the corn dog, because it is a pork product and a corn byproduct, and that's just what fucking Iowa is, and then deep fried, which is also a thing that we always do. It just makes sense. So that's got to be the state traditional hot dog of the state. Otherwise, we're just probably the boring ass missionary hot dog of ketchup and mustard on a shitty white bun with a lips and assholes hot dog. Like, that's probably the next thing. If the corn dog answer is unacceptable because you're looking for a traditional hot dog, then
corn dog's fine.
I think so too, but you never know when people are going to get uppity about that shit. Moving on. Do you think this is from Blaze Storm, by the way, valued member of the Patreon member of the Patreon Blaze Storm. Do you think Fuse has come back for Rosetta? If not, how could they improve the mechanic? Maybe pitching in similar fashion to the flow counters. Yeah, go ahead. I need a minute.
Yes, I think it's back, and I don't think that it needs to be improved upon because it was already interesting enough, in my opinion anyway, when you were deck building, trying to figure out the right number of cards to fuse versus not fuse. Like, if anything, the way that you improve upon it is just by further creating the tension between saving the card to fuse versus playing the actual card, right? So if you have more playable cards where really what you want is the decision tree, right? So like, imagine you have a lightning fuse option, and the lightning cards that you're running all have like an extra benefit if you play them first somehow, right? So if there's some other either keyword or some other mechanic where like some of your attacks are like, if you have some of your attacks where it's like, if you've played a lightning card this turn, do X, Y, or Z, but then you have other ones with the fuse, and so you just want to kind of create that tension where you give players the ability to express more skill when deciding, do I save this to fuse or do I play it instead, etc., etc. But I think that the mechanic is fine, and I do think it's coming back.
I think Fuse is fine. Yes, I agree. They could create more tension with it. It was not very tense in Tales of Aria outside of when you had to pitch something. That was your fuse card to pay for something that you wanted to fuse, that kind of thing.
Right.
So it kind of played into itself. The real problems were these 0 cost fuse cards. Looking at you, Bramblespark. But those were the more painful ones for that set. So I think that they've learned enough lessons that they can just keep going with Fuse and it's fine. You really don't have a whole lot to it. The other question from Bladestorm is pretty easy. Also, is 7 the new Popper? Yeah.
Yep.
They printed a bunch of stuff that shrinks the power of defending attacks. So be 7. Don't be 6. 6, not good enough. 7's just the right size. Good?
I mean, no. I just don't. I don't have the ability to cover it.
Can't cover the 7.
I can't cover the 7.
All right. Well, better Command and Conquer then. But the last question is from Justin S. What armory deck are you hoping to see the most? I hope a Draconic Illusionist will come sooner than later. First of all, straight to fucking jail. Straight to jail.
Straight to jail. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200.
No, absolutely not. I do think that the Supreme Court would even call that an unofficial act. So you definitely do not have immunity from prosecution. But, man, what armory deck do you want to see the most?
Arachne.
Shocking.
I mean, name a hero. So my answers are this: Arachne and then Betsy. Because when I think about heroes, Assassin's got a bunch of support, but the Arachne specific stuff outside of Course of Tendency hasn't really been there. It's been more generic cards. And he is somebody who didn't really get the benefit of a core set with his actual debut. And so while he has cards there, I think that there's still an argument to be made that he has less support, direct support than some of the other assassins. And similarly, Betsy needs more wager stuff. Those are the two that come to mind, because when I look at heroes who don't have enough core support, if that makes sense, they're it. And I also think, just given what we've seen from the existing armory decks, where it's one new card and maybe some new equipment, I also think those two are the ones who could benefit from that the most as well. You could give a chest piece, for example, to Arachne that is different from Redback but still works with the contract stuff. It would be right in there. Or you could give him an arms equipment that is different from Flick Knives or Shriek Razors, and I would feel like that's fine. You could give him a new dagger that's an Arachne specialization dagger or something in there. And then one other card, and that's probably enough to give him support. Similarly with Betsy, you give her 1 or 2 more pieces like Chapeau, where you can help with your wager stuff, and then you give her 1 or 2 new wager cards, and it might be enough to get people, excited. Log. Yeah. Or that's just it. Or give her a new weapon or whatever. But I think both of those heroes are good candidates for stuff like that.
Yeah. So looking at the kind of spread they have now, there was KO, Brute, Azalea, Ranger, Bolton, Warrior. I think they want these to be sort of playable if you don't have the most experience with the game type of decks, is the best way I have of putting it. So that kind of removes specifically Runeblade from the equation. Probably Wizard 2. So that kind of leaves you with Mech, Warrior, Ninja, Guardian, Ranger, Assassin as your as your possibilities. Maybe illusionist, but and looking at these like hero counts, like you're dead on. There have been 2 Betsies played during national season and 3 Arachnes. They are the 2 lowest on the list. The next one's Olympia. You've already done a warrior.
I was gonna say Olympia would have also been on my list, but we've got warrior covered. And then my next choice after that would be Max.
Yep, Max is actually Teklo's below Max, so I would say
Teklo's below Max.
Maybe
but
Teklo.
I think in terms of like new player accessibility, I think the Evo thing is more complicated than Max's Crank.
But Viscera is actually the next lowest played deck, and that's probably the most straightforward of the Rune Blades, but it's still not the most straightforward. You know,
it's still not. If they were going to do a Rune Blade, I think Vincett would be the better choice, personally.
Yeah, probably. But. And then Guardian wise, you know, Betsy's kind of number 1 with a bullet there because again, just needs the support. But you know, you look at the illusionist side of things, you know, Prism well represented, Enigma well represented. So having an illusionist one just doesn't make a ton of sense. So I would say it has to be between basically assassin and mechanologist. And or Betsy or Guardian or Betsy. And I think Betsy makes the most sense to me. Just because, again, it feels like you're missing half of her cards. Because she wants to wager. There aren't that many great wager cards. Her weapon doesn't help. Needs something that is more in tune with her actual hero. So, yep. I think I am 100% on board with Betsy or Arachne at that point. I think either way is good.
Well, and so the other reason that I picked Arachne too, not only did he have his like debut in a non-core set, but I just also think he's marketable. All the assassins are marketable. They all have great character designs, but he's marketable while also being the most new player friendly, in my opinion, right? It's pretty straightforward. You're an assassin, you take the contracts, you make the silver, you know, you do the thing. So
right. And that's, I don't know. But what piece of equipment would you upgrade on Arachne? Because they've kind of done an equipment upgrade of sorts in each of these.
Yeah, so I'm saying so far. Chest, I think, is the one that makes the most sense, and then either hands or a new dagger, like an offhand dagger specifically.
So,
and the reason I say that is because I think that not only is Black Tech just like really good and not something you want to replace, but it already has a budget replacement in Snaps. And sure. I think personally that Mask already existing as a Majestic, but also just like art wise and character wise, Mask also fits his character, that I don't think you really want to target those two, right? So then it becomes Chest. And like, yes, you have Redback, but it's not great for him. And then he very frequently, most commonly runs Tunic, and anything that creates, you know, a easier barrier of entry for new players where they don't feel obligated to buy a Tunic, I think is a good thing. So I think Chest makes the most sense. And then, like I said, hands, you've got Shriek Razors, you have Flick Knives, and they're great, but they're also both legendary. So I think another hand option would be fine. But I just personally really like an Arachne specialization offhand only dagger, right? That just does something for him. Like ideally, I'd like it, even if it was like a dagger that doesn't even have an on hit, but it just allows him to pitch 1 blue to swing with like dagger 1, dagger 2, right?
Yeah, sure.
I think it's fine.
Now let's move to Betsy really quick. I know you talked about a new specialization for her as well. That was in the equipment slot. What if they actually printed the first time ever some really good Guardian feet that were a Betsy specialization? I
would be fine with that. And I think that's actually the right way to do it for her personally. I think that, again, if you're talking equipment for her, a log as a weapon choice, specialization, so it doesn't go to all Guardians, but like special boots, or again, a chest piece, just because, again, your most commonly played chest pieces are legendaries in Tunic and or plating. And so if you're trying to help that new player barrier of entry,
Sure,
I think that makes sense.
But you could also do like Earthlore Bounty with them too.
I mean, you could, but I don't think that fits the. Well, I don't think that fits the Betsy play style, right?
No.
So just because there are other options, I was trying to think of things that if you're a new player and you get this and it's like, okay, let's say it doesn't have like a good chess piece and you're like, well, what are my options? And then you look at it and it's like, well, it's 2 legendaries or things that make no sense. I don't think that works as well. There's plenty of glove options between Crater Fist and, some legendary options as well. I don't think you want to replace her hat because her hat's already great. So yeah, I think that specialized boots, a log, and like 2 new attacks that have wager on it would be ideal for her.
Okay. Makes sense. Man, we're gonna get out of here record time. It's hour 10 and I'm ready to thank patrons.
Thank them.
Let's thank them. Let's get thanked. A T-Mobile thing, I guess. So let's start with our associate producers. We have Andy, Sindra, Jacob, Kenny, Larry, and the Salty Sea Cat. For our executive producers on up, we have Alex Blazestorm, valued member of the Patreon. Dom, let's good thrust. Matt Tutokes, Poxonus, Trevor Baker, Papa Mike, Philip, Rich, and Sonny. If you're interested in becoming a patron of Flesh and Pod, you can go to patreon.com/fleshandpod. The link is in the show notes. We have 6 tiers. Choose one. Any paid tier gets you in a FAP After Dark. We are going to be fapping After Dark this Wednesday, July 3rd. Late at night, I believe. I think big 10 Central, 11 Eastern is our target time. Might even be a little later than that, just depending on people get around. But we'll definitely ping the Discord when we are good to go and setting up. So it is a holiday the next day for most people. So you can stay up late, get up to some shit with us.
I mean, you'll probably be up late because of fireworks scaring your dog anyway.
Yeah. If you need to contact the show, you can send us an email at fleshandpod@gmail.com. You can ping us on Twitter at fleshpod. You can join our Discord. Links in the show notes. It's free. You can make you can YouTube comments. You can come into the YouTube comments. You can like and subscribe and do all those fun things. Please do. We're still we may actually have more episodes than subscribers at some point. It is definitely possible. Yeah, Charmer, where can they find you?
If you need to contact me, you can not.
Is an option. That's it. That's all we got. You're just gonna tell them no.
Or I mean, you can ping me in the Discord or whatever.
Okay.
I mean, I guess.
Okay.
Hey, and if your name rhymes with B Lane, you might want to let me know like when I'm going to see you at an event next so that I can bring you a bag that my wife brought.
What rhymes with B Lane?
Elaine?
Oh, right. I guess it theoretically does. Yeah, if you need to find me at Logan Peterson's my personal Twitter, but honestly, I handle all the socials for Flesh and Pod anyway. So if you get a hold of Flesh and Pod, you're just getting me most of the time anyway. I don't think Charmer's ever logged into our Twitter. Let's put that.
I don't think I have the credentials to do it, or else I would have.
They are definitely in the linked in or pinned in the host channel in Discord.
I don't think I have access to the host channel.
You literally do. You've actually talked in it. So
no, I'm pretty sure you're confusing me with Jordan.
I'm not actually confusing you.
Well, I didn't know, or else I definitely would have signed in on my phone because I am the intern that handles most of my social media. So,
I mean, you're probably the intern that handles all of Ice Cave Radio social media at this point too. So there is that. How does it feel being an intern?
Feels fine.
Yeah. Okay. Good talk. Yeah. So I think that's all we got for this week. An hour and 15 minutes, just in and out. Feels great. But
How about an hour and 15 minutes is in and out, by the way?
I mean, okay, when you have Josh Scott come on the fucking show and he's like, what's the record? It's just like 2:45. Do you think we can get that? Yeah, Josh, we can get that.
With Josh,
Easy. But now he set the record at, what was it, 3 hours?
I was more than that.
I can pull that up. Like, it's
Like
very easy for you to
he
do.
committed to Lord of the Rings extended edition.
He did. The Josh Scott episode is 3 hours and 11 minutes. So the next time he's on, he's going to want to do like 3:20, because you got to keep making the one number go higher. And so I think that's what he's going to go for. But either way, we'll be back for 136 next week, I would assume, barring any unforeseen calamities. So thanks for listening. And yeah, we'll talk to you next week. Bye.